Hi, welcome to the second season of Broadcast Chronicles, Episode 1. In the first season, we got to hear some, pretty amazing stories from those who embrace the best of broadcasting, and at times taking their wisdom in new directions. We also got to ask the question, what is the future of their craft? Is it podcasting? Is it social media? Or is it maybe even finding new purpose in legacy media? And we got to hear many different answers and a lot of different wisdom. And some of the most creative people are redefining how they connect with audiences. And that seems to be a common thread. Our next guest is certainly someone who has pushed the limits of pop radio. He's a voice Vancouver woke up to for close to 20 years, a top-rated morning show host. And now we get to find out what makes Kid Carson Kid Carson, on this episode of Broadcast Chronicles.
Broadcast Chronicles, revealing the most surprising, compelling, and even shocking stories behind some true characters from the other side of the microphone. Here's Bruce Clagan.
Yeah, Kid Carson describes his mission as one of helping us think with clarity, feel more connected, and see life from a fresh perspective. His latest project is called Loosely Enlightened. Thanks for joining us for this chat. Now, Kid, it's really about that search for human potential, isn't it? What else? How did this all come about?
Yeah, you know what? It was a mixture of taking my favorite moments of my career, like my favorite interviews, and checking the statistics on my Spotify, Apple backend. And it was clear that what I love is what the audience loves the most. And I'd say it actually started when I was on FM radio, and I did a couple of things that got me in trouble. One of them was inviting Eckhart Tolle onto my morning radio show. And of course, we're pop morning radio. We're doing Britney Spears and all these different guests. And then suddenly, after 3 months of trying, we got the thumbs up that Eckhart Tolle was going to come in the booth. And I thought, oh my God. And I didn't tell my boss because I knew he wouldn't be happy, because we just dropped the 13 songs we were supposed to play that hour. And Eckhart just floated into the room. And we just did a 1 hour interview, and the phones blew up and people loved it because it was something that it was in a place it wasn't supposed to be. And I think it really stood out. And we did that a second time with a guy who's now super famous named Dr. Joe Dispenza. We did the same thing with him. And I always get pulled in the office afterwards going, okay, that interview was awesome, but you can't drop 13 songs to host Joe Dispenza on the air.
You could do anything once.
Right. I did it twice. And just going back, that sort of planted a seed with me that, man, I would love to have more of these conversations. And so I'm doing that now, where we dive into consciousness, human potential, reality, and also like weird but awesome, stories about alternative health. Health. So I'm listening in my headphones to myself, and then you on my laptop speakers. So I feel like I'm talking like I'm deaf.
But you still have that articulation of a radio
broadcast, baby.
But this is a new project, and you are getting into some of the deeper thoughts. It's not superficial, and quite often when we think of radio, we think of kind of top level. It doesn't go really into a lot of depth. Not saying you in the past, but what radio is today. This is almost something completely different. How do you square that?
I mean, I love radio. I love giving away cars, cash, trips, being silly, having a funny phone topic, and having people call up, and like that's always a thing that I love. But even in doing that, we always peppered in a little bit of authenticity, which I know is a real buzzword now. But we always sort of got into the personal experiences that the cast was having. Whether it was a relationship or a breakup, or we tried to go a little more deep. And I'm an avid reader, so I think that made our show a little bit different. And, there was a limit to what you could do in that space, because you are doing something silly and fun, and it's a lighthearted type of format. But, when there's advantages to doing both, I mean, I love the high energy of radio, and you got to be in and out and quick. And it's, I love that. And I love working in a team. I really miss that. But to do the podcast and dive into someone for 40 minutes to an hour and 20 minutes, whatever it is great. I mean, I'm just infinitely curious, and I'm all about the follow-up questions. So I have a lot of questions.
Even more free. I know you always have been a creative person.
Mm.
But when you have your own podcast, you can really not worry about constraints, rules, and if it flops, it flops. It's on you. And if it's a success, wow, what a feeling! And you can expand on that. That must be
I'm finding
freeing in a
my,
way.
yeah, I'm really finding my way because what I've learned about myself is that I actually really do excel when I have boundaries.
Hmm.
If I have boundaries and I'm allowed to go wild inside those boundaries, I tend to feel more comfortable. And the thing about people might not realize in podcasting, when you're used to coming from a real structured sort of format, is when you have no boundaries, it's almost a little bit weird. Like you don't know where, like when I started in podcasting, I was interviewing everyone about everything.
Yeah.
And now I've set up my own, I've learned this about myself and become more self-aware in that space. So I'm like, okay, I need to set up my own boundaries of here's what I'm going to talk about and go wild inside of that sandbox. So yeah, it's a weird thing to have ultimate freedom. It's a thing you have to get comfortable with that. It sounds awesome, but you need to figure out how it works, best for you.
Let's go back to the start of your journey and take a look at how Kid Carson became Kid Carson. Where did it start?
Well, I went to radio school at Humber College, and one of my instructors there was opening up his own radio station. It was a Christian radio station,
Hmm.
and it was a Christian format. And after I'd sent my demo tape out to everyone and didn't hear back from anyone except actually Julie Adam from Kiss 92 Toronto.
Rogers.
Yeah.
Rogers.
And Julie is just one of those epic people that anyone who's worked for her just can't say enough good things about her.
Yeah.
So no one got back to me except for her. And I got back to my dorm room and I got a voicemail on my dorm phone from Julie saying, "Hey, I got your tape. Sounds like you're having a lot of fun. We don't have any space right now, but like keep going." And I was so elated. It took me like 10 or 15 minutes to realize it was a turn down. I was just so excited. Julie called me from Kiss 92. Like it was Tarzan Dan, Mad Dog and Billy, Corey Kim, all these amazing radio stars. And I just couldn't believe it. And, so that really lit a fire under me. The fact that she took time to like notice me. And my first job was at my boss's Christian radio station in Barrie, Ontario. And I showed up there. It's a format completely foreign to me. I didn't know the songs, the music. I didn't know the intro times. I didn't know anything. But Scott Jackson, who was the owner of that station, was an incredible guy. He let me make all the mistakes. And from there, after a year and a half, I reached out to Julie Adam again and sent her a demo tape just to say, "Hey, how am I doing? Can you give me a critique on my tape?" And again, it was like cassette tape back in the day.
Oh, yeah.
And she called me to come down. She's like, "You know what? I'd like to meet you." And that's where I got my first big break from a little Christian radio station in Barrie, Ontario to doing swing in Toronto with Kiss 92 for Rogers. And I mean, I felt like I won the lottery. It was like the most insane.
Just to be sure, even in the smaller markets, and Toronto is certainly not small, but you go into a program director's office back in that day, and you would have cassette tapes. You would see them on the back. You'd see paper resumes and cassette tapes that would be piled high until they were about to tip over, then they'd start a second pile. That's how many people used to apply, and that would be 1 week. So, I mean, to get chosen out of that, there must have been something. So now you're in the big city, the big time, and you're doing swing.
Doing swing, yeah. And then I started doing middays.
Yep.
And I would fill in for other positions. I would fill in for Corey Kim at nighttime. And then one of the most exciting moments was when the morning show was going on vacation for a week. And then Julie got me to fill in for the morning show, which I was completely ill prepared for. It was just by myself. And it was mostly just me hosting in between best of Mad Dog and Billy bits, but I would set them up. But getting up early and being in the booth at that time was a thrill.
Yeah, absolutely. But there came a point where Vancouver came a calling. How did that work?
Well, Kiss flipped to Jack. And so they laid off the entire staff. And I remember the day, it was raining outside. And even the people that didn't smoke were sitting outside on the curb lighting up cigarettes. Like, I wish we hung out more. Like it was like a season finale of, Dawson's Creek or some, melodramatic show. And then I got hired to come out to Z95. And I'd never been to Vancouver before. I didn't realize the station was actually in Richmond. but I came out to do evenings there, and
Horseshoe
had like and
Way.
it, right on Horseshoe Way, and that was my first, kind of sort of full time slot, and had an amazing time. We just rocked the night show and had a great. It was amazing.
To be sure, that's where Kid Carson became a household name. And I don't say that lightly because in Vancouver and in radio, you don't become a household name very easily. But that's got to also do something to you as a person. Were you always an extrovert? Were you always ready for that? Or did this come as a bit of a shock? Tell me about it.
I would consider myself an introverted extrovert. So I recharge
Okay.
by I recharge by being alone. Love to read. I could be alone by myself for weeks and be thrilled. Um, but then when I'm out and I'm on, I thrive in it. You know,
Yeah.
I can go to an event and hang out with people and talk to strangers about anything for hours and hours and hours and hours and love it. Then I come home and I collapse. You know, uh, so I always love doing remotes. I always love being out mingling with people, and I'm super curious about people. I love people. As long as I get time to recharge afterwards,
Yeah.
I'm good. But the hardest part about getting into a major market, at Z95 was, I think it's before Reddit was a thing, but there were like message chat boards where people would talk about, the radio personalities. And I would always race for the first month. I'd get off the air at midnight and I'd race to read what people would say about me. And they'd say horrible things. It would crush me. And I had to learn how to like turn that off, So there's a
That
real,
is tough.
oh, it's so tough. I've never
Because
experienced that before.
everyone assumes that if you're on radio, you've got this steel exterior, you sound like you're confident, you're in control, nothing is going to even penetrate you. One comment, and it could be like a bit of a reflection, and
Yeah.
it's not necessarily true or anything. How did
That's
you
the first
handle
thing I
that?
tell to younger people that get into radio that I've worked with along the way. I'm like, just don't go to Reddit, don't go online and look, don't look for yourself. Just ignore that. And I did. That experience did help me build that thick skin I needed for when I stepped into my first morning show, which was across the street at the Beat 94.5. That really helped a lot.
Yeah. Over this career, you must have met some people and interviewed and talked to people that really did stand out. You, they say never meet your heroes, but what does stand out? Which ones really, in retrospect, you look back at and you think, wow, that was cool?
I have Chris Myers to thank for this. He was the program director at the Beat 94.5, which is where my
Yeah.
career really, really took off. And like he was the only PD I think to this day who really understood where my head was at and trusted me with a really long leash. And like we made him a character on the show and he loved it. And sometimes we make fun of him. He was the boss Chris. And sometimes I'd
Yeah.
call him and say, "Hey dude, can you call up live on the air and be really mad at me for a minute for crossing the line?" He'd be like, "I'm on it." Like he understood the assignment. And it's hard to find people to work with like that. But the thing that made him really special was that he really invested in taking us to radio conferences and mingling with other morning shows. And he took us to two amazing idols of mine. And we got to sit in studio with the legendary Kid Craddock in Dallas.
Yeah.
And first of all, the size of his studio was massive. And he had his like Vox Pro and his music scheduling system on a big projector, like a movie screen on the wall. And
Oh,
it was
yeah.
it just fired up my imagination so much. And Chris and I look at each other and go, yeah, like this is what we got to do this. And so to be able to understand the behind the scenes of how Kid Craddock worked with his staff, for example, he didn't attend their morning show staff meetings because the rest of the staff were a little bit intimidated by him. And they just understood there was a dynamic there. And so they would brainstorm, come up with the ideas, and then they would meet with him afterwards. Like it was just a different way of doing things.
It's funny you should say that. And I know in radio they make too much of that. Sometimes if you are the personality, you don't turn up to something. Oh, I guess he's too good for that. And it's not. That's not it at all.
Every team has a different dynamic. You got to work through what works best for the creative process.
And
Um,
sometimes the smaller voices have an opportunity to come out and really get some input away from the personality, the radio personality. Do you find that?
yeah. I think so too. I mean, yeah, I mean, I never really ran like that. Like for me, like I always looked at my job as the main host is to be like the quarterback and to make everyone else the star. So I always wanted to have a really wacky, weird intern. Anyone I've worked for, the program directors, or was like, I don't think that's the right intern. I'm like, trust me, he's weird. Like he's got a really weird personal life. This is exactly it. You know, um, we had a weird intern that was sounded like he had an English accent and he was really stuffy. And I'm like, okay, he's going to be Benjamin the butler because he's stuffy. He's worried about
Awesome.
he's worried about his mom, what he's going to say on the air. He's got to call his mom after and apologize for things that he said. Like, I just love, I mean, the bigger you can make the people around you, I mean, that's the thing, right? So I was always on the ground level of we got to have weird interns and people who are willing to be vulnerable and so I always wanted to know everything that was happening with my cast of characters, like what's happening, like what happened at your dentist appointment, like the little things that we can find moments that we can all sort of connect with. But I wanted to mention one other guy that we got to sit in studio with, and that was Bob Rivers out of Seattle.
Oh, yeah.
And I know he just
passed
recently.
Yeah.
I was really sad to see that. And I dug up an old photo of me in the booth with him and Nira and Chris Myers. And it just flooded me with some amazing memories. But Chris was great like that, like meeting my idols who were not really celebrities, but other radio stars who were the people that I just admired and loved.
What about musicians, though? You must have had those backstage passes and the interviews and everything where you go back and then you get to kind of hang out with some that you've always known of for years. Anyone stand out there?
It's funny. I had a chance to go interview 50 Cent.
Oh,
And it was when he had his big movie coming out I think it was called like Get Rich or Die Trying.
yeah.
And they'd flown in all the top morning shows from across the US to interview him at this big premiere in Vegas. And I'd never been to Vegas before. And they invited 2 Canadian morning shows, one from Toronto, one from Vancouver, and I got chosen. And I went by myself. I'm kind of walking around Vegas by myself for the first time, like just a deer in headlights. But the thing that stood out with that experience is that, yeah, seriously. And the thing that was wild about that is that because we were from Canada, we were last on the list. So all the big American morning shows got to interview him first. And at the very, very end of the day, we waited for hours and hours for our turn. It was finally my turn. They said, 50 cents ready for you. And I walked in and I could see on his face before he knew that I could see him that he was exhausted. I mean, this guy's probably done, 60 interviews. And I could tell he's just like, oh, he's tired. And I sat down in front of him and he just turned it on. Like he was so kind, so professional. He gave me a nickname. He's like, yo, Kid Canada. Like he was so into it. This guy's at the top of his game. Hey, Shorty, it's your birthday is like the #1 song. He's got a movie. He's got his own like G-Unit running shoes that he's wearing.
Yeah.
And I just thought I was so inspired by the fact that like, hey, this guy still made the time to be a total professional and give me my 10 minutes. And I just never forgot that,
Because it's about connections.
Mhm.
That's what our careers are about as broadcasters or performers.
Yeah.
It's the connection you make. They always talk about audience like it's a big, massive thing. It's one-on-one. It's you and the person you're talking with.
Some people forget that, but that 10 minutes that he gave to me
Yeah.
and didn't blow me off and didn't just shrug the interview off. He gave it to me as if it was like the first interview of the day. And so, that's one of the things I've always taken with me. That like sometimes you get to meet someone for just a couple of minutes and maybe I won't remember because I've met, 50 people that day. But that person who listens to me for the next 5 years will remember anytime they're in the car and my voice comes on, they'll turn to the next person next to them and go, oh, I met this guy like 5 years ago for 10 minutes and he was a decent guy, so those are the moments.
Exactly. Those are the moments. You've got this wisdom, and with this wisdom, you're able to put it back into your podcast now. What do you hope to do? Tell me about the podcast and what is the goal here?
What is the goal? Well, I guess to become the Pink Jay Shetty. Maybe. I think podcasting is really exciting. I have a lot of heroes that are doing amazing things. I just sort of, I want to dive into more of those topics of human connection and consciousness and all the stuff that I'm really into. The fun thing about podcasting is you can find an audience who really digs what you're into. So I'm just going to see where it goes. I mean, I'm still sort of relatively new to it, but
How are you going to mark success? Is it going to be going in and taking a look? Well, I know we all look at the numbers and everything, and there are plenty of ways to measure it with podcasting. But is there another way for you to measure success that isn't maybe based in numbers?
I think just leaving an impact with people. I know this sounds very cliche, but given the topics that we talk about human connection and human potential and a little bit of transformational content, I just love it when people come up to me and go, man, like that thing you said, maybe it's something I've forgotten. They'll be like, that really affected me. Like there's one, I know this is a little weird, but I interviewed a guy who has found a way to, like, he's healing certain types of cancer with, this like marijuana type concoction that he's come up with. Interviewed him. He was a wild character. Who knows if it's true or not? But then, like 6 months later, I get a bunch of messages from people who are like, wow, I heard that interview. I contacted him and my husband's alive because of that. And those moments they give you a real pause for thought. You're like, wow, that's wild, man. Like moments like that are
cool.
Oh, it's so cool.
Yeah.
The way you can talk to so many people, just talking through one microphone, it never gets old, So, yeah,
it doesn't. And with this, and this is going to be a huge success. I know it. I feel it, and it's very interesting too. I love what you're doing here. But is there another project or something else in the future that you see yourself doing, and you've just got kind of like the germ of the idea at this point, and may want to explore and go deeper? Do you have that?
Well, I'm thinking a lot about that. A lot of the podcasts now are like the big ones in sort of my space. They come out with books and they go on tours and they do some things like this. I don't exactly know. That's my honest answer. I really don't know exactly. I'm sort of open to everything.
There will come a time when people will talk about Kid Carson in the past tense. I hate to say that, but it's going to happen.
Of course.
What do you hope they say about you?
I've never really been one to think about legacy a lot. I just really want to be a great dad. It takes up a lot of my energy. I have 2 sons that are 7 and 11. And to me, it's a lot of pressure. It's a lot of pressure to set your kids up where they feel like they can be confident and be happy and not be sucked into, the matrix, where you're on your phone all day and you're just worrying about what people think about you and worried about likes and follows. My kids are at the age where they want to get into social media and all that stuff. Yeah. So that takes a lot of my energy. Again, people disappear and then they forget about you. You get a little mention on a blog somewhere that, this person's gone and people remember you for a week and then you move on. So I don't think a lot about legacy, but hey, if people can remember me that I was a guy who cared, that'd be cool. I mean, I really do care about people.
Wow. Thanks for sharing. Kid Carson's Loosely Enlightened is downloadable on all those notable podcasting services. Big ideas about reality, consciousness, human potential, and some awesome discoveries along the way.
Broadcast Chronicles is written and hosted by Bruce Claggett. Music, Follow Your Heart via Upbeat. Graphic design, Creative Shovel. I'm Sarah Mackenzie. Subscribe to Broadcast Chronicles wherever you download your favorite podcasts. This has been a BFC Communications production.